Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude Beyond Mystic, and welcome to this deep woo-woo episode entitled Aliens on the Moon. With me, of course, are the wonderful team of the Future Forecasting Group. You can find them at futureforecastinggroup.com. We have Mr. Dick Allgaier, Daz Smith, and Edward Riordan. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. And a lot of people were asking me to have you guys back on because Cliff explained that he had tasked you guys to look at the moon. So let's start here. Can you explain a little bit, to the extent that you can, what the tasking was, and then we'll get into some of your RV material on it. I understand that some of it is hit and miss, but I do want to have that conversation here with the audience members and tie in some of the other data points we've been finding here along the way since we first aired that episode. So, Mr. Allgaier, let's talk about the tasking of the moon by Cliff High. Let's start there.
Well, we did one tasking for Cliff High, which was maybe inconclusive, but there's been a lot of remote viewing work done on the moon. So we came prepared today to talk about that. I've tasked Daz and Edward a couple of other times, and they did phenomenal sessions. There's a history that goes back to even Ingo Swann, who was the original remote viewer, and Daz is the expert on that. Cliff High was wanting to see what was behind a heat anomaly on a crater on the backside of the moon. It's a very complicated story.
Right. And the more we scratch, the more complicated it gets. And I do have to admit, this is probably the episode that generated the most emails on our website. People asking us questions about the episode, contradicting information coming in, and just overall a lot of interest. And maybe we'll do a part 2 with Cliff High. He said maybe in February or March, I think, where we're going to tie in perhaps the concept of the return of the Elohim and how that all ties into this slave farm planet that we all find ourselves on.
I really enjoyed that session. I do. Here's what I remember from it was that when we did the debrief, I looked at the tasking and I didn't really understand what we were supposed to be doing. And then once it started to become clear to me that, okay, there's something that was detected on the far side of the moon, I believe, and there's something going on there. We don't know what it is, and we're trying to get an understanding of it via remote viewing. That once I understood that, then my session made a lot more sense to me, because in my session there was a chemical compound, there was chemical reactions going on, there was expansions based on chemical reactions happening, and those types of things. Elemental things were taking place.
The interesting thing for me on this project was within 24 hours, because we all do lots of work within future forecasting. We all work other projects as well. I also worked another target for another project within the same 12-hour period. So I did the Cliff High one, and then I went straight on to work on another one. And I had a bleed over in that other project of 3 pages of data, which was purely moon-based data and sketches, which didn't actually belong with the target I was working at the time. So I feel that was a clear bleed through from the Cliff High target on that, because it just made no sense in that other project whatsoever. And that's where I believe I got my better data. You probably haven't seen that, but if I could present, if I could share the screen, or I could show you that data if you'd like to see.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so here's my data. You'll have to excuse the handwriting. So as I said, it had nothing to do whatsoever with the target I was working on, but it was within the same 12-hour window. So I think it was bleed through. And I knew I gave myself a movement command here: move to the moon and describe. And, I had an underground, I wrote here code underground safety area here, which were made from caverns, which were hollowed and excised. And then I said, I have a flash image of a laser drilled melted circular tunnels with lots of hollow spaces. And this is very old. And then on the surface, I had this spider web type construction here, which I felt was an above surface and below surface area. And it felt like it was lit up with lights, and it was like a city. And then I tried to draw that in more detail here. So here's the moon itself, with showing the dark side of the moon and this kind of web-like structure-like city on the surface there.
Shot down. But anyway, back to Edward's data, which is very interesting. I feel it was the control center on the Earth, and then the what happened on the moon.
Well, what was interesting here, what was really pulling me in to get me to draw that crater and the details of it, was that there was something that I could only describe as a dome over the crater. And I tried to draw it in there without, messing up the drawing too much, but I wrote it on there that there's a dome. It feels like there's an energetic dome over this field. And then you have this other object coming in, and inside of that crater is where this thing triggered automatically. It's like the notion there wasn't like there was some living creatures down there who were like, here, incoming, we got to get them. It was more like an automatic trigger. This thing got too close, and boom, a defensive measure was taken because this thing had gotten too close to an automatic defense switch kind of a thing. That's
Wow.
about the best way that I could describe that part of the session right there. It was fascinating. Just a great target. Really, really fascinating thing to go.
Let me move forward to the next slide here then. Edward, if you want to explain this one here.
So this is I had elements in here of what I was trying to describe what was taking place here. So you have an explosion, an impact. You have something that looks like a type of missile getting sent out and causing a violent explosion of something. And then, this could be completely another session or a big expansion on the target, was this notion that there was a cloaked or an invisible type of plane, quote unquote, that was also detectable in the area as well. So this here is my attempt to decipher and draw and explain this object getting hit by this projectile that was sent out to literally destroy it.
That's fascinating.
The blind protocol that we use, which a lot of people really don't understand, but we understand the beauty of it because it frees us of what we think the target is, and it takes other parts of our brain then have to get utilized to then go through this process of decoding this information that we're getting, and go through this process of this process of discovery and exploration is what we do.
It's absolutely amazing. And Clips in the chat, he says, yes, is in the French version of yes. Agreed. Dick tried to teach me and I got headaches for 2 days. Yeah, me too. It was very difficult on me. Clip says, Elohim deniers. You guys don't want to talk about ETs, but you guys talk about ETs all the time.
You want to go, we can go deep woo. If you want to go deep woo,
this is the deep
we can,
woo.
at some point, if just hit the deep woo switch, I'll go deep woo.
Anytime you want to go deep woo with me, absolutely.
Well, okay, how long are we going to go with this? I mean, I could do it. I could give you a 1 minute deep woo right now.
Okay, let's do it, and then I'll get back.
This is not based on remote viewing.
Go ahead. Okay, too much for them. Before we get to the next segment, Daz, I want you to chime in also here. What was your take on that luminosity and perhaps the portions that are still yet to come here? A lot of people are still in the chat waiting to see if they can maybe have some information on how best to navigate all this as it transpires. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with the other guys, really. And your listeners have to bear in mind as well that this kind of event where all of us get the same data, to such a high degree is a bit of a unicorn type event for us. It only comes along once every couple of years kind of thing. So that was the big shock, and seeing us all just totally blown away by the similarity in the sketches and the data. I do think we probably did pick up predictively the Israel Middle East situation that's occurring right now. My scenarios that are running through my head at this very time are that our bigger event data may have been a miss, or it may have been seen by the people that make the decisions and they may have done something preemptively to not allow that part of it to happen. Or the more worrying scenario is that the bigger event data that we got, and we got it significantly time after time. I don't know if we've released all that data or not, is yet to come. And that's where my head is thinking at the moment, is that the data was so strong, so luminous for us, that we reported it so many times, and other people also came to me independently saying they had similar stuff, is that I think that there is something larger on the horizon, but not quite within, the exact timescale of what happened with Israel. So yeah, I still think that there's something very big and very very destructive is there on the horizon, boiling away and possibly going to happen.
Problem is, people look at gold, say for example, JC, and they say price of gold is $2,000. It's going up. Well, my answer to that is gold doesn't go anywhere. It just sits on your desk. It's a big lump of metal. What happens is the money around it becomes more and more worthless, which means it's like the Weimar Republic. It takes wheelbarrow fulls of this make-believe money to buy that same ounce of gold. So they have it all backwards with regard to what money really is. And it's not money, it's currency, okay? So it's a big surprise for a lot of people when you explain it to them. And again, in our course that I teach, we're talking 12, 15 hours of education about the backbone of it and how it actually works. So it's tough to say where we're going, except that we are in a transition, in my opinion. But the problem is, like you just mentioned, the next 3 months, I think one of the big problems is it's just like when COVID happened. I was in line at a grocery store. I always tell the story one day, and it was at Christmas time, 2020, and you had to have 6 feet spacing and you had to have your mask on. And this woman behind me says, "Oh, thank God 2020 is over. I'll be so happy." I'm thinking to myself, lady, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Let me bring back this piece here before we get into some of the commodities. It was the remote viewing on the death of the dollar. Now, there's a lot of data sets and there's a lot of language suggesting that we're inching closer to this particular event here. The emergency meetings, the shock, disbelief, dismay, ruin, catastrophe, the puking congressman in the hallway here. We're getting close to that here with the constitutional challenge also in the United States. But that suggests here that the dollar would diminish in value and perhaps die. Whereas some other proponents here or market analysts are talking more of a situation closer to a crack up boom, where the dollar would rise in value to eventually maybe just end on a dime. What's your view on the trajectory of the US dollar moving forward? Mainstream media, I wanted to share this. Brett Wilson on his Twitter was saying, legacy bullshit media. Justin Trudeau had very bad headlines in the last year, but as of November 21st, Trudeau announced a new media bailout. Lots of cash for them. They're dying on the vine, of course. And then suddenly the headlines are not as bad for him, but they're really bad for Pierre Poilievre. Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that. Huh?
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. We're about we hit 5,000 in the live chat on Rumble there, so thank you so much, everyone. Let us know what your takeaway is of this particular video today. Let us know in your comments also if there's any other redirects on this Sci-Fi World Lunacy and Moon series of ours here. If you want us to uncover more information and other content, just let me know in the content and comment section below. I'm having trouble speaking. It's been 2 hours. But thank you so much, everyone, for watching. And please hit that like button on the way out. And, of course, visit futureforecastinggroup.com. And if it's for you also, you might want to visit one of the remote viewing on what happened after World War II. But we can't talk about that here on YouTube. I love you guys. Have a great day. And we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Thank you, JC.
Thank you.